Hello and welcome back to Born to Rant. I'm Brandon, and this week we are here to dive into one of the biggest flops in Disney history. A movie that completely changed the trajectory of their animated studio, and of course the movie that along with Titan A.E. and Atlantis: The Lost Empire helped kill 2D animated science fiction movies for good. That's right, today we are diving deep into 2002's Treasure Planet, directed by Ron Clements and John Musker, and starring a truly stellar voice cast that includes Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Emma Thompson, Martin Short, and Brian Murray. We'll take a look at the movie's nearly 20-year journey to get made, why it failed at the box office, everything that's turned it into a cult classic, and its legacy over 20 years later. Now, I have to admit that Treasure Planet is not a movie that I grew up with. It was actually only a couple of years ago that I finally sat down and watched it, and when I did, I was kind of blown away by just how much I enjoyed it. It genuinely felt like a lost movie of my childhood, but what can I say? Preteen Brandon just thought he was way too cool for movies like this at the time. But there really is a lot to love about Treasure Planet. It's got an incredible look, and I think it does a better job of merging 2D and 3D animation than either Titan A.E. or Atlantis did. And it creates something that looks truly unique. Like Cyborg John Silver is the perfect example of this. He's a 2D hand-drawn character, but the cyborg pieces of his body are not. They're 3D animated, and the result is something that feels real and tangible, like you could reach out and touch his giant cyborg arm. I also think that the way this movie balances its sci-fi elements with its more traditional adventure elements is genuinely really clever, and a lot of that is because of the 70-30 rule that Ron Clements came up with, which said that the design for the movie should be 70% traditional elements from the Treasure Island story, and only about 30% of it should be sci-fi. And it's because of that that the spaceships in this movie look like traditional ships, and why most of the characters are dressed like it's the tail end of the 1800s. And it gives us some really cool visuals like Jim's Solar Surfer, and this moment of Jim and John going out in the dinghy boat in space, it just rocks. But before I start waxing poetic about how unique of a movie Treasure Planet actually is, let's go back and learn just a little bit more about how the movie came to be. And it all starts back in the year of 1985 when John Musker and Ron Clements originally pitched the idea of doing Treasure Island in space to Disney. However, it was immediately rejected by Disney CEO Michael Eisner because he knew that Paramount was developing a new Star Trek movie loosely based on Treasure Island, so he instead bought the pair's other pitch, which just so happened to be this little movie you might have heard of called The Little Mermaid, which of course would go on to become a massive hit, and it kickstarted the Disney Renaissance. And of course, the Treasure Island Star Trek movie never came to be. So the team pitched the idea once again after Little Mermaid, but were denied and instead assigned to work on 1992's Aladdin, which of course would go on to become yet another cultural touchstone and an absolute classic. So the team decided to pitch it once again to Disney and were denied yet again. So this time they took their pitch over to feature animation chairman Roy Disney, who immediately saw the potential in the project and told Eisner that he should let them do this. So begrudgingly, Eisner agreed under the condition that the team first make Hercules, which would be released in 1997 and would be yet another huge hit for the team. So finally, in 2000, the team was able to fully begin working on Treasure Planet. And it sounds like for the most part, this was a fairly easy production. But I mean, making any animated movie is never easy, and this team had the joy of trying to figure out how to get 2D and 3D animation to work together. I mentioned his design a minute ago, but actually John Silver was one of the first challenges for this very reason. Apparently the team first tested the 3D graphs using footage of Captain Hook from Peter Pan, and as you can see, Hook looks cool as hell with John Silver's giant cyborg arm. The other big technological issue that the team ran into is that Musker and Clements really wanted to move the camera around, and luckily the deep canvas technology that makes this possible had just been created a few years prior for use in 1999's Tarzan. Basically, the process required the 3D animators to create 360-degree versions of each digital set before the staging of the scene even takes place. That way, once the team was ready to put the characters into any given scene, they could move them to really any place on the virtual set and have some real depth. Unfortunately, while most everything behind behind the scenes was going smoothly, once Disney started doing test screenings of the movie, they realized it was just not connecting with audiences the way they'd hoped it would. So in true Disney fashion, they decided to just increase their marketing budget on the movie to really beat people over the head with it. And to be completely honest, I think this was a huge mistake and a big part of the reason the movie failed. Well, that and the fact that Shrek had come out just a year earlier, and it made animated movies feel a little dangerous, and it actively made fun of Disney movies. And actually, Disney had kind of already had their own animated bad boy break onto the scene just a few months earlier when Lilo and Stitch was released. And I do genuinely think that the 1-2 punch of Shrek and Lilo and Stitch just had people looking for more snarky animation and not something like Treasure Planet that felt grand and sincere. And when Treasure Planet was released into theaters on November 7th, 2002, it actually became the first studio movie ever released into IMAX and traditional theaters at the same time. But not even premium theaters could save this movie, because on its opening weekend, it placed 4th at the box office. It would also only make $16.5 million against its $140 million budget on its opening weekend, which was immediately a massive disappointment, and sadly, it would only gross a worldwide total of $110 million, making it Disney's biggest financial bomb ever up to that point. Even after being released on home video, Treasure Planet could not recoup its budget, selling only $64 million worth of DVDs and VHS. Ironically, even though Treasure Planet was a massive bomb both financially and critically, it did still manage to get nominated for Best Animated Picture at the Oscars the next year, although it would thankfully lose to what I consider to be the greatest animated movie of all time, Spirited Away. Apologies for the interruption, but I wanted to jump in and remind you that Born to Rant is a completely independent channel, and I use no AI in the making of my videos. And if that means anything to you at all, it would mean the world if you could like the video or subscribe to the channel. It really helps out small independent creators like myself. And with all of that out of the way, I think it is time for us to dive deep into 2002's Treasure Planet and everything that has turned it into a stone cold cult classic.
But they'll have to pry it from old Billy Bones' cold, dead fingers afore I...
If we're talking about what keeps people coming back to Treasure Planet, I think it really boils down to the animation, the world the movie builds, and the characters that make that world feel real. And I've already mentioned the animation a bit, but I genuinely believe that out of all three of the animated sci-fi movies we've talked about that intermix traditional hand-drawn animation and 3D animation, Treasure Planet uses it the best and looks the best. Much like Titan A.E, the backgrounds are almost entirely computer generated, but I just think the backgrounds here look a bit sharper and more realistic. And to be fair, Treasure Planet did have almost double the budget that Titan A.E had, but I digress. My point is that the way these elements interact together give this movie a truly original look. Like the scene with the collapsing star turning into a black hole is really not that far off visually from some of the stuff we see in more modern sci-fi movies. But also the animation helps make this feel like a fully realized world, and I love all of the various details that help fill in the kind of world this is. Like one of my favorite moments early on is the way that Jim's mom puts on a screensaver over the windows when it starts raining, and the way that Jim like cracks the screen open like it's any random set of blinds. And then of course there's also the RLS Legacy, which first of all is just a great reference to the original author of Treasure Island, Robert Louis Stevenson. And the ship itself has so many set pieces that I love, from John Silver's kitchen to the lower decks with the getaway ships, and the main deck itself also features some truly great moments throughout. And I love that in this space adventure movie we have a ship that more resembles a classic ship, and the movie barely explains this, but apparently the Etheria mentioned in the beginning of the movie is supposed to be an atmospheric portion of space, so that's why everyone can breathe in space in this movie. Honestly, I completely missed this fact until doing research for the video. But it really is the characters in this movie that bring it all together. First of all, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is great as Jim Hawkins. I've also always genuinely thought that Joseph Gordon-Levitt was a great actor. I mean, even going back to Angels in the Outfield and 10 Things I Hate About You. And I think he brings that same kind of charm to this role that gives some real warmth to the overall movie. And I think his full introduction with him solar surfing is just cool as hell. Although my hot take here is that even though I think James Newton Howard's score is amazing and absolutely perfect for this movie, like listen to this. I do think we could have used a needle drop here rather than later on in the movie when we do the bonding montage with John Silver. And speaking of John Silver, Brian Murray absolutely brings this character to life, and Murray's an interesting guy. He was mostly known as a theater actor, and this is one of his very few movie credits. But I mean, I truly can't picture anyone else trying to do Silver's voice. Murray just has the perfect tone and cadence to really bring it all together. Like, the way he can go from being tough and commanding to vulnerable and sweet is no easy task, but Murray makes it feel as natural as can be. And the bonding montage between Silver and Jim is genuinely one of the sweetest and strangest moments in the movie. Like, I love it because I love a bonding montage, but it being set to this Goo Goo Dolls song in space just feels a little odd to me, but who cares because the song actually rocks. I mean, it's no Iris, but what is? And actually, Joseph Gordon-Levitt insisted that he and Murray record their scenes together in the same room, and I think that decision really helps add to the warmth of their performances and makes their bonding feel that much more realistic and natural. I think it's a big part of what makes
You got the makings of greatness in you.
feels so realistic and heartwarming. Well, that and apparently the animator of this section, Glenn Keane, was kind of ripping off his own life for the scene, taking inspiration from an uplifting speech a coach had once given him after a football game, and that feels really special to me. And okay, let's talk about the real star of the show, Morph, because I mean, come on, how can you hate Morph? He's adorable and funny and cuddly and adorable. And to me, it makes perfect sense that Morph was able to soften up John Silver over their time together. There's also David Hyde Pierce as Dr. Delbert Doppler, who serves as some great comic relief and plays the fussy financier of the trip incredibly well. But I think his best scene in the movie is easily when we meet Mr. Snuff of the Flatula race, and essentially he's a snail with tentacles and he communicates by farting. And speaking of the crew, man, there are some great characters split amongst the two different crews. I mean, Emma Thompson as Captain Amelia is perfect, and I love how fast she talks and how in control she is. Plus, I think it's cute that she and Doppler get together at the end, and apparently it was originally in the script that their kids at the end here had been birthed by Doppler, because that's how his alien species gets down, but Disney found this to be too risque of a concept and cut it. There's also Roscoe Lee Brown as Mr. Arrow, and I mean, how can you hate Mr. Arrow? He's a giant rock guy, and he, pardon the pun, rocks. And I find it legitimately shocking when Michael Wincott's Scroop kills Mr. Arrow, and Scroop is such a genuinely creepy character. And I think a big part of that is that Wincott has one of the best bad guy voices of all time. And I mean, how can we forget to talk about Martin Short as Ben? It can be really hard to introduce a new character this late into the movie, but I think it actually really works here. Ben missing his mind, but knowing there's something wrong he needs to warn his new friends about is genuinely some great drama. And I mean, who doesn't love Martin Short yelling like an absolute madman for no reason? And once the movie gets to the titular treasure planet, we're kind of firing on all cylinders, and Jim sneaking back onto the ship to get the real map is a real highlight of the movie. I mean, he gets to kill Scroop, and it's pretty sick. Then we get the entire ending sequence, and I love the concept of the world portal here that Captain Flint used to move easily between worlds and disappear. It's just so cool, and also it vaguely reminds me of Stargate. And then the sequence with the planet core is awesome from start to finish. Like, Jim figuring out where the treasure is genuinely clever. And then Silver having to let go of the treasure to save Jim is genuinely heartwarming. And I love Silver's line here.
Silver, you gave up?
This is a lifelong obsession, Jim. I'll get over it.
And I think it's really cool that the conclusion of this movie brings back Jim and his solar surfing skills to save the day. Although this movie is definitely using some cartoon logic as far as the timing of everything is concerned, but it's fine. And the movie ends with Jim letting Silver get away, and their goodbye is so sweet, and I love that Silver throws him some of the treasure he managed to get his hands on, and we end with the inn rebuilt, Amelia and Doppler together, and Jim ready to become a cadet at the Interstellar Academy. So, over 20 years later, what is the legacy of Treasure Planet? Well, much like Atlantis, The Lost Empire, I think it's become a cult classic, and there's an entire generation of people who grew up with this movie on DVD and had no idea that it was a flop because it's such such a fun and different animated movie. Unfortunately, with this movie's underperformance, it meant that animated adventure movies were all but dead. And I mean, Treasure Planet couldn't even get a direct-to-DVD sequel or an animated show going. It did that poorly at the box office. It also caused Disney to cancel a bunch of other animated projects that had been in the works. Musker and Clements would also essentially be fired from Disney over this movie, before being brought back in 2009 to do The Princess and the Frog, and then again in 2016 with a little movie you might have heard of called Moana. And it really is interesting how we got these three animated sci-fi epics over the course of 3 years in a row, and without fail, they each bombed at the box office, only to find a dedicated fan base on home video over the next several decades. For me, if I had to rank these in order of favorites, I'd go Atlantis, Treasure Planet, Titan A.E, but that's just me. But let me know in the comments which of these three animated sci-fi movies is your favorite. What are some other unofficial trilogies or cinematic trends I should take a look at next? If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. It truly means the world. And as always, a very special thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. You all truly keep this channel running. And speaking of the Patreon, I wanted to just let you all know that I have now also turned on channel memberships for Born to Rant. Basically, I have one tier. You can become an executive producer, which will get you credited at the end of every Born to Rant video. You also get early access to new videos and exclusive access to occasional members only videos. Like, I just posted a mini review of the 13th Floor for members only, and that is live now. So if you're interested, depending on how you're watching, there should be a little button beneath the video to join as a member, or you can find me at Patreon via the link in the description. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And that's gonna do it for Born to Rant this week. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.